our relationships don't occur in isolation. They are dynamics. They work together. And so when we're just like wasting away, that impacts all of our other relationships. So disconnection, irritability. And it's like you hurt for those mamas because they really poured themselves into their kids.
Yeah.
But by doing it, they're now bitter and resentful. And that's going to create a wedge in their relationships.
All right, guys, we are back again with another episode of the Still Coloring Podcast. And you know what's really fun? You guys know this. I really do my best to have like experts, licensed professional therapists, doctors, all the things. And on this season, baby, I got 2 doctors. Just want to put that out there. Dr. Chinwe Williams, she was amazing. She's a trauma therapist. She helps kids process through trauma. It's just good stuff. And now I got another doctor because we're fancy on the Still Coloring Podcast, okay? Dr. Morgan Cutlip, how are you doing, girl?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my God. Okay, tell us what you do, what your background is in, all the things.
Oof. Okay.
Maybe not all the things. You know what I'm saying?
I know all the things. I'm like, where do I begin?
Not doing it.
So I have been in the field of relationship education for over 15 years. I worked alongside my dad for a long time. He's got his doctorate in psychology. And he was like writing courses before like everybody and their uncle had courses. And so I kind of grew up, man, he got his PhD when I was in grade school, and I would go to classes with him, started going to conferences with him all through high school, started speaking with him in college and grad school.
Oh my
gosh. I grew up sort of in the culture of taking psychological theory and research and translating it into practical, usable tools. So I've been in that space for a long, long time. But when I was around maybe like 18, 19, I remember riding in the car with my dad and telling him, someday I'm going to carve out my space by doing something for women. But I just didn't really know what that looked like, right? And then fast forward many, many years, and our daughter Effie was born. She's 10 now, which is absolutely bananas. But I was like, I went into motherhood thinking I would dominate. Like, this is my
calling.
We
all did. We
all did, right?
I'm like, we're about to crush this. What y'all? How many kids you want to give me, God? I'm about to crush it.
That's totally how I felt. I was like, I was made for this. Are you kidding me? I've got degrees, like I have semi-normal parents. I got degrees. I'm going to be great. And, oh my gosh, it smacked me so hard upside the head. I felt totally shocked by the loss of freedom. I don't know if Effie was difficult. She felt very difficult to me. She is also a strong-willed child. Lots of fire. I call it like she's my fiery spirit. She's wonderful, but she felt hard. And
yeah.
I just like from the beginning felt like I was falling short when I expected to be really good at it. And then some life circumstances, my husband got relocated for work. We did a lot of months apart when she was little, and resentment built, I was like, you don't know how to handle our scary baby. And also he didn't jump in enough. And so just like the accumulation of stuff left me feeling really buried and lost in motherhood. And I knew, I didn't know the answer, but I knew at some point I would emerge from that kind of like haze that we're all in early motherhood. And I was like, I want to help moms navigate this more empowered. And I don't know the answer, but I have the skill sets to figure it out. So that's what I've been doing.
And that is what you do. I follow you on the Instagrams. And
thank you.
Listen, when we talked about this season, I was like, oh, here we go. You came recommended. I was like, oh, I'm in. I'm a stalker of your Instagrams now.
I have no idea.
Well, here's what's happening, though. I think it's evident that you are producing content and providing strategies and resources, obviously out of a place of skill, but out of a place of passion and relatability. And you can see it, like you've been there. Thank you. So I love it when people are putting content out from passion, because it's like, you can like smell it on them. You're like, this means something to you.
It means everything to me.
It means everything to you. And it translates super well. Now I'm going to ask you a question, but honestly, I'm a little ashamed, okay? Embarrassed is a better word, because I don't have shame no more. I left that in 2020.
Good.
That one crazy year, remember? But you talk with women, moms specifically, about burnout and guilt. And I don't want to talk about that. Okay. So just act like I have all those things perfected
Okay.
and I didn't just burn out this year and have to take a sabbatical. Okay. Let's act like it's not for me. It's for the other moms that are listening in. Talk to us a little bit about why it feels like a lot of moms are currently experiencing burnout and we're drowning in guilt and shame. I mean, all the things. What's happening? Help us. Okay.
I think I mean, there's no like right or wrong answer here, but I believe there's 3 contributing factors. I think the first is that we're sort of in a like we can do it all and be it all type of time in our lives. I feel like women are now like, not only am I going to take care of the kids, but I'm guilty of this as well. I'm also going to homeschool, and I'm also going to, do a side hustle or a full-time hustle while at home with no childcare. So I think we're in this place where we are really like piling way more on our plates and not leaving the simple life behind a little bit. I think there's some people who are trying to like reclaim that.
The soft life is what we are begging for, right?
Yes, we need it. We need a soft life. I think that's one piece. So we're spread thin. I think women are spread thin. And so when we're spread thin, because we're regularly sort of programmed with these belief systems that we need to make our needs small in order to preserve and care for our relationships, that when we're spread thin, it's like, who gets sacrificed? It's us. And so I think we are the first to be backburnered. I think another contributing factor is we live like this intensive parenting movement. We parent now with so much more hypervigilance than I think even 100%. Our parents' generation.
Oh,
where
that's
it's like,
good.
It's like, oh, is this playroom Montessori enough? Is it stimulating? Am I like entertaining my kids enough? Am I providing enough extracurriculars? Are they, am I phrasing this the right way, or am I going to leave them traumatized because I said the words wrong? Like, we are just living in this time where we're trying to break cycles. We're trying to repair what we feel like our past generations didn't do well. And it's a beautiful thing. But when you take something like that to extreme, it's exhausting. Yeah. It's stressful. And I think we're like uptight sometimes about how we approach parenting.
Gosh, yes. You're like just describing me. When my husband listens to this, he's going to be like, yeah, I remember that one time you scoured the internet for a Montessori bookshelf. Remember that? I'm like, uh-huh.
Yeah, where you like feel bad enough your toys aren't all wooden. Like, what are we doing to ourselves? It's absolutely no kid. I mean, I don't know. There are kids. My niece and nephew have Montessori toys and they love them. But like our kids are like, give me the buttons.
Talking about me. I know, give me the buttons. They're like, it can't be too bright. It can't be too colorful. It can't be too. My mom sent like my son all these little things and I was like, Mom, it's got to be black and white. I mean, what are you doing here? This is just way too much color.
Or it's even like stuff like you'll see like, don't praise your kids too much. Or don't do this, you're going to raise a codependent. Like there's a lot, like it feels like the stakes are really high in parenting. And I think it's exhausting to live in that sort of like hyper-vigilant, intensified state in parenting. So I think that's number 2. Number 3 is that, and this is the most obvious one, which is that we just have like, we live in an information overload and comparison culture.
Gosh, yes.
And so it's like, I can think of it in a million ways. Like one way for me that it showed up was that, all like the experts that exist. And I know I contribute. I try to be very careful with how I present content, but there are a lot of experts out there. And it's like they're providing information in like one little context. It doesn't take your context into consideration. And so we'll like consume it and we'll be like, why isn't this working for us? Like our daughter started having demonic tantrums. They were like, I was like, she's possessed. Like, I don't know what's going on with her.
We have the same kid. What's going on? I don't know if my kid's living at your house right now. Okay.
We can talk about all this, but like, she had these crazy, wild tantrums. I was like, not prepared. I thought we were going to do this like, it's time out. And we'll chat about it and we'll like skip off in the sunset. And everything I was consuming was like, name the emotion, talk about the emotion, name it to tame it. I would say that to her and she would come at me. It would get worse. That didn't work for us. It wasn't. And so I feel like when we consume stuff like that, that doesn't fit for our context or our kid, what we end up a lot of times doing is feeling like we're doing something wrong. Like there's something wrong with me or there's something wrong with my kid or the both of us. And so the information we consume and then the comparison, there's always somebody who's prettier, skinnier, richer, has a
Girl.
better behaved
Filter.
child, more, right? All the things. Yeah,
Yeah.
better filter.
Yep.
So all these things combined, I think, create an atmosphere that's like we're primed for burnout
That's
with all
good.
this stuff going on.
Oh my gosh, I feel so righteously convicted right now. It's like it's so funny. It's like it's no wonder you burned out in the summer because the last summer you had your baby and you were like,
Yes.
this time I'm getting it right.
Oh
This time I'm gonna
gosh.
do everything so perfect. Da 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 da. Da. And it's interesting because it almost is literally like the antithesis. Like it's the opposite of what we want. Like we're striving to be the best parents and we're driving ourselves into being the worst parent.
Yes. Oh, I say that all the time. It's
I
like,
don't like that.
it's terrible. Like all we want, and like the
Yeah.
really like sweet side of this is like we're really all wanting to be, especially this generation of millennials and younger generations, we're really wanting to be amazing parents. And we are working our butts off to be amazing parents. But what you said is so spot on, which is that in the service of our relationships that matter most, we sacrifice so much of ourselves, become burnt out, grumpy, irritable in the relationships that matter most, which ends up hurting them. And so we are not doing
Yeah.
ourselves
It's like
or our
I
children
never
any
want to yell at
service.
my kid. It's like I never want to yell at my kid. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to make sure I'm yelling at my kid because this is just so hard. I know. But it's interesting. Okay, so this is hard though because I feel like we know what's at stake if we don't care or we aren't as intentional with our kids. We know what's at stake because for a lot of us, our parents didn't pay attention to any of this, dismissed our
Mhm.
feelings. We're not talking about bypassing here, right? Like we're
No.
talking about kind of the pendulum of being mindful and aware of how you treat your kids and talk to your kids and how you create healthy humans and also being healthy yourself. I wonder what's at stake if we don't get this right? Like, if we don't really start to put up boundaries and guardrails around our energy and our time and we keep hitting burnout, what's at stake for moms?
Yeah, I think there's like lots of levels of what's at stake. I mean, the basic stuff we hear most about is like, well, stress or depression, anxiety, mental health issues and diagnoses, autoimmune. Stress is a huge factor in autoimmune. Women have 80% of people diagnosed with autoimmune are women. And I know there's multiple factors there, but stress is a big factor. So we have like that side of things.
Like real disease. Okay.
Yeah, disease. You're going to
Yeah.
get sick.
You're
And
gonna get
then,
sick. Okay.
and then I think the
Goodness.
other side is like all the relational, like sort of consequences that we can experience, which is just like distance in our relationships or rupture in our partnerships. I mean, this stuff all affects one another, which is something we always need to remember. Our relationships don't occur in isolation; they are dynamics. They work together, and so when we are when we're just like wasting away, that impacts all of our other relationships. So disconnection, irritability. And I think like, I feel like everybody knows a mom like this, which is if you know that mom where her kids are gone, they're grown up, but she poured everything into those children. And now she's like, doesn't even recognize herself, but it's not even just
Mm.
that, but she sort of resents her children for having
Ooh.
a life of their own. You know the mom who makes the passive
Oh, I
aggressive
do.
comment like,
I was just
"Oh,
about to say, and they say it.
yeah, see you're out with your friends again. Hope you have a good time. Don't worry about us. We're over here." Right? Like
We're just over
that.
here
And
holding on by a thread. Yeah, well, it's the
right.
thread. You did it, girlfriend.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
And
I
it's
don't
like
wanna be
you
that mom.
hurt for those mamas because they really poured themselves into their kids.
Yeah.
But by doing it, they're now bitter and resentful, and
Mm.
that's going to create a wedge in their relationship. So
I
there's
just
a
wanna
lot
say
at stake.
Yeah, I just wanna say this. Nobody is talking about this. Nobody is
Right?
talking about it in the way that you are because this is so interesting to me. It's like we're doing our best to be great moms. Like everything that we hear, you're right, when it comes to parenting right now in this season, in this time of our humanity is do this, do that so you don't jack up your kids. Like
agreeing with you, but I want to elaborate on what you're saying.
Help me. No, help me. Correct me.
It begins with a chapter that's called Balance is Baloney. And the idea behind this is that we are sort of fed this myth that we can achieve some perfect, sustainable balance in our life, in our relationships, and I mean, you name it, we're all after balance. And we sort of think like, okay, you know, if I just like turn the dials the right way, I'm going to find it, I'm going to stay there. And then what happens is, because we usually will find it for a minute, and then we get messed up, and then we're like, what did I do wrong? I had it, I lost it. And so if we end up feeling really bad when we can't stay balanced. And
that's good.
I believe instead that life just has a way of pulling our relationships apart. It just does. The beautiful, the good, the painful. Like it's just, you know, having a baby. It's awesome and a blessing and beautiful, but it's really inconvenient for your relationship with your partner. Like it's just a natural part of life. So the idea is our relationships are going to be pulled out of balance. But they don't autocorrect. And so if we leave them out of balance, we don't do anything about it, we're going to develop vulnerabilities that never really get repaired. This applies to all our relationships, even a relationship with God. Like it applies, right? Like we can drift. And so the third point is if you can believe the first two assumptions, then the third is we have to be active managers of our relationships. And so we have to learn how to check in on them, turn the dials, make some adjustments. And so that's in my book. That's what I teach moms how to do. I give a framework. What are you checking in on? What is a relationship? What does that look like? What are you checking in on? How do you turn those dials to when you're out of balance, when you're feeling disconnected? And, you know, the like marching order of my book is mother yourself like you mother your kids, because we already have the skills. We're doing it for our kids. We just don't do it often enough for ourselves. And so it's not about mom coming first. It's about mom being considered, mom getting a turn.
Turn.
You're right. I love your word pendulum. That's how our
pendulum.
relationships work.
Okay, but I loved mom getting a turn because I want a turn to be like nurtured. I want a turn for someone to cut my carrots. I'm like, somebody else cut these freaking carrots. Steam these carrots and cut them for me. Okay, I have two things to say. I know people are like, what's the book? Like, as soon as you said it, I know my listeners are like, let me pull over on the side of the road so I can search it. Okay, you already said it, but I just want to make sure we say it again. Love your kids without losing yourself.
Yes,
like,
that's the book.
Fam, what? Like, this is the pendulum. Surprise. The pendulum comes with a resource and it's a book. Thank you so much. I just want to say that. Number two, it feels like what you're saying is a saying I heard probably like 7 years ago at this point, and I've been trying to master it, but Lord, it just don't work for me yet because I'm out of pocket. It's like you're saying, for moms, we need to break up with balance and marry priorities. And here's the difference, like priorities change, right? So like when I first had my small little whippersnapper, who I love so very much, my little squishy baby boy, Sammy, oh my gosh. I was like, first of all, I was sleeping downstairs because I'm a rule follower, and I was like, I can't go up too many stairs. So it's me and him on the couch.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. What?
Oh my gosh. Listen, I had a little mini bassinet or a little mini crib, and I would... Listen, it was me and him. I was like, this is my priority. Like, it is what it is. Well, my marriage wasn't looking cute. I remember my husband coming downstairs to get some water from the kitchen and being so mad that he turned a light on because it interrupted me and my sweet baby boy's time. And I realized that for the first couple of weeks postpartum, that newborn was my priority. Like, he's just helpless, right? But there should have been a switch at about 3 weeks when he could have probably went to his own room, 4 weeks, however, whatever. And I could have started to prioritize my marriage, because now we had gotten so separated because I was like, it's me and this baby boy that I'm obsessed with. And you just need to fend for yourself, buddy. I don't even know what my husband ate for the first month or so. Okay. I'm like, are you eating?
He had a snack. His snack stash in his room.
There's Twinkie wrappers in our bed. There's Twinkie wrappers in our bed. And it feels like that's what you're saying. It's like, we're not that like woman, that little statue thing with like the little holdy things, and it's like a weight on one side. I don't know what that's called, but it's like we're saying we're committed to prioritizing when we need to. Is that?
That's it. Yeah, you're getting it. Like, you totally get it. I think like the language I use is we don't need to try to seek balance, but we need to get good at balancing. So it's like a practice.
Oh my gosh.
And then in one of my chapters, I have a whole chapter, I use the words right together, which I loved, which you said commitment And then you said priorities. So I have a whole chapter on commitment. And within that chapter, I talk about priorities and how we have to learn how to shuffle priorities in a way that we can feel at peace with. And one thing I talk about in that chapter is how regularly as moms, there's a conflict between urgent demands and higher order priorities, which is kind of what you're talking about, which is the urgent demands of your son versus the higher order priority of your marriage. And, how do we navigate these really tricky conflicts that come up so often for us? I mean, day to day for us, and how we prioritize our life. Yeah.
This is amazing. I feel like a really good student right now. My achiever is really just...
I'm hitting it. You're doing awesome. This is great.
I need a PhD? Do they need to call me Dr. Toni? I'm just kidding. I don't want that. I went to seminary. I don't want no more degrees. It's over for me. Okay. So, you also said this mantra, mother yourself like you mother your kids. I don't even know how do we do that?
Yes. Yeah, that's the book. But yeah, I mean, so I'll break it down a little bit. So the shorthand version is go mom yourself, which I have a section at the end of the chapter, which is like a reminder. So I try to help moms kind of remember that phrase so that, and then have a trigger with it, whether it's, every time I go to the bathroom, I go mom myself, or whether I make a sandwich for my kid, or, so they can remember to do it. But part of how we mother ourselves like we mother our kids, or we go mom ourselves, is to regularly do a self-check-in. You can do it in no time at all. This is not a big ordeal, which is why in the book I give a picture of a relationship. So moms will leave the book with a visual in their minds of these are the 5 areas I'm running my self-check-in through. And I can do one of 2 things. I can, in the moment, turn the dials, make a slight adjustment wherever I'm noticing my vulnerabilities, where I can get the most bang for my buck. Because sometimes it's like, I need multiple things. What's going to
hair,
help
nails,
me right
massage,
now? Yeah.
Everything would be good right now. That's good.
Exactly. What's going to do it for me?
Yeah.
And then the other thing is if you don't have the time. We all know it when we're deep in it with our kids, we're in the trenches, we do not have time to do some of that stuff. At least when you do your self-check-in, you can define what you need. So when we define it, when we provide language and definition to something that is difficult or is invisible, it empowers us to do something about it. Maybe if not then, but later. And that alone, that definition will provide some immediate relief.
Okay, listen, instead of asking your kids all the time, oh, what are your feelings? Name it to tame it. You need to ask yourself.
Yes.
I love this.
So easy.
I never do this.
You don't do this?
I feel terrible. I go to counseling, I'm in counseling, my counselor's asking me, but right,
but isn't it hard to answer sometimes?
Oh, well, it's very hard. But the ownership of doing it for myself is totally different. I'm accountable to the time that my counselor's giving me and the time that I'm investing in my mental and emotional health, right? But to be kind enough to myself to really just invest in my own self and say, where are we at right now, girl? Let's take 5 minutes before we wake up our little baby and really say, how are we today? Well, how about you name it, girl? Wow. Yeah. I'm talking to myself right now.
Well, I think that I think a lot of women struggle with their needs. So they'll get a moment alone and we'll be like, I don't even know what I need right now to feel good. Or you go talk to a therapist and they're like, how have you been? You're like, oh, actually, I don't know. Give me a minute. Let me tune in. And I think it's such a simple concept to tune into ourselves. I mean, but we really don't do it very often.
I love that. But I also think about this. Okay, this is my achiever talking, but now when my counselor asks me, I'm actually probably going to be able to tell her because I have checked in with myself on my own time. She's going to be like, how do you feel? I'm going to be like, actually, I wrote a little list down here, girlfriend. I'll email it to you. I love that. But I love it because you're speaking to a people group that I really do believe we do genuinely take the short end of the stick. We take the short end of the stick at restaurants when it's I guess the kids can have all of my meal because they don't want theirs. And dad's just eating a steak by himself,
Yes. You're cutting everybody's food up and sweating and handling the tantrum.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Your cute little outfit that you tried to wear is now ruined because your baby decided to suck on the outside of your boob through your shirt. And so I just want to say that here on the podcast. Story. Oh, 110%. I used to get these little cute white little tanks from Target.
Yep.
And when I was breastfeeding my kid, he would just be like, oh, is it time? And he would just latch on to the outside of my shirt and there would be baby food right there on my
Right there.
area.
Nice.
I'm trying to be censored, but I'm like, this is my podcast, guys. Get excited. I'm just going to say what I want to say. I'm just
so
saying
relatable, though. Oh my gosh. So many breastfeeding and boob stories.
Oh my goodness. I'm still embarrassed a little bit. Anywho, all right, I'm a practical Patty. So I love a good story.
Yeah.
I'm a storyteller. I love it so much. But one thing I'm excited about is some practical tips for moms. And you've really weaved them in through this whole situation. But like, if we've got note takers here, they're like, this is your moment. What are some tips for us? How do we stop burnout? How do we just care for ourselves and mom ourselves and all the things?
Yeah. So there's practical tips throughout the whole book. I'll say one that I think is really powerful, which again might sound simple, but we don't do it, which is where we put our focus. So it's around self-concept. I think a lot of moms.
What's self-concept? We don't know what that is.
Okay. So, all right. Can I get a little abstract? And then
oh my
I'll get
gosh,
real
please.
specific?
I'm like
Is that
craving
okay?
it. Yes. Come on. I'm excited.
I don't know how much I can ramble on. Okay. So self-concept is essentially like we sketch a picture of ourselves in our mind. Okay. Now, if you're like, what are you talking about? I'll explain it. But we do this. This is a really easy way to understand. We do it with our partners. So do you ever like talk to your partner and they're about to say something and you kind of like already know where they're going? And so you have a reaction. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
This is you reacting to the picture in your mind of your partner more than actually what's happening in reality. So we sketch these pictures of people we're in relationship with in our minds. And they're based on a little bit of fact, a little bit, but mostly about what we think about what we know. So our opinions about the facts. So like whatever, like my husband leaves socks on the floor all the time. That's a fact. But how I sketch that picture could be like, he's a selfish guy who thinks I'm his maid. Like I got another child. Or it could be
got another child.
People always call I can't stand it when people do that. But
it's so bad.
Or you know, it could be my husband travels a lot and this is a sign that he's home and I'm grateful. So we have all these sorts of ways of sketching these pictures, how we focus, and the way we sketch these pictures is totally in our control. So moms do this. We do this with ourselves, and that's our self-concept. How do we construct this picture in our mind of ourselves? What do we focus on? What do we minimize? So if you're like, got this nice picture sketched, you are hanging out with your kid, you start and losing your energy, you kind of whatever, and you snap at them and you lose it. In that moment, your picture can shift. And most of the time, us as moms, we shift to the ugliest, nastiest picture of ourselves. We focus in on all of the ways we're falling short, all of the ways we're probably screwed our kid up in that moment. And we, in turn, feel really yucky. This fuels how we talk to ourselves. And really, that ends up draining more energy, making us more likely to lose it later on in the day. So it has this like additive effect. So the quick intervention is think about how you're sketching your picture. Where are you focusing? You can shift your focus on all of the ways you show up well for your kids, on the big picture of what's going on in your life. Maybe this was an exception. How do you shift your focus in order to have a clearer and better self-concept? I mean, we're reminded of this, you know, in scripture even. It's like Philippians chapter 4 verse 8. It's like focus on things that are praiseworthy and noble and pure and lovely. And it's like we need to practice this in our relationship with ourselves.
There's so much good stuff to what you just said. There's a level of gratitude, right? Like recognizing that, I mean, God gave us these tiny humans and God gave us our spouse, and socks are an indication that you have this living, breathing, beautiful human being who's committed their life to you. And there's a sense of gratitude. And then there's also, man, oh my gosh, I'm learning so much right now. I'm so excited. This is not even for y'all. This is not even for the followers. What are they called? Listeners. I love the listeners. I'm grateful that you're here. This is for my own self. I hope you're getting something out of it. But there's that. And then there really is like this, we call it the story that we're telling ourselves. Like this is what we have to say from Marriage Counseling Girl. It's like the story I'm telling myself is you ain't taking out the trash because you hate me. Okay. Yes. It's like, what? And it's this reframing about your life. And you're so right. Like it haunts me for days. Sometimes it's not even the parenting that's hard. It's the guilt that comes with it. And that I am taking myself through, that's hard. But if we could just reframe that. Wait, tell me again. Say the word again. I want to learn it. I want to have it into my self-concept.
Yeah, just our picture of ourselves in our mind. How we You think of it, you
I
know,
love
like how
that.
they do those caricatures of presidents.
Oh,
They're like,
yeah.
that's what
What
we
the
do.
day?
We'll be like, what are we making ridiculously big and and like
Oh.
highlighting, resketch it.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay, there's also something that you said. There's another layer to this. Like Dr. Kurt Thompson, he's been on the podcast a few times.
Mhm.
He's so great. A neurobiologist, but like he also has this faith bend to it. It's beautiful. He said sometimes we get and stay into the weeds of our lives instead of coming up and seeing the whole, like all the
Yes.
acres. And you
Yes.
said that. It's like we're just looking at all the little crevices, all the weeds that we're picking out versus coming up and seeing these acres
Totally.
of beauty that
Yes.
represent our lives.
I love that. I like that. So same concept.
good.
Mine
Yeah.
is twisting
us.
the aperture of like a camera lens. So it's the same concept. Like you can
Come
zoom
on.
in on something or you can zoom out and get the big picture, right? Like he's talking about the whole landscape.
On.
And I think it's really helpful, but we have control over how we do that. And so we have to do that mindfully. I think about the zoomed out perspective you see all over social media, which is, oh, you only have 18 summers. That's zoomed out. And that can be helpful or that can be kind of guilt inducing where you're like,
Little
oh no, and I didn't make the
Missed
most
one.
of the summer.
Yep,
Yeah.
the sixth
And
one.
so twist that lens, zoom in on how you're showing up, zoom in on those fun moments.
Wow.
You know, you can fluctuate between zooming in and zooming out, and it has a really powerful impact on how you experience motherhood.
Dr. Morgan Cutlip. This was if you're listening to this and or watching this, like there's some other mamas who need to hear it. Like this is one of the resources that you send. Okay. Don't send the pumpkin spice latte with the cold foam. I mean, like send those too. Send all the recipes and such. But like we need to send more recipes for like our lives. Okay.
So true.
How to build a good life. Okay. That's what we need. We're making good lives here. I'm excited for you. I'm excited about your book. I think I have been scrolling down your page, looking for content, studying you, getting prepped for this. And it's freedom that you're giving us as moms.
Yeah.
And I think that's really meaningful. And I think that like that changes and shifts a generation because I mean, what would it be like if we all had coffee with other moms and we were practicing and taking in these resources and episodes like this in your book and we said, I really like momming is really hard, but I'm in a really good space about it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. How good
Can
would
we
that
have
be?
that conversation one day?
No.
It's good. Well, I appreciate your time
Oh,
and your
this has been
expertise.
awesome.
And
You made me
kudos
feel
to your
really good.
dad.
Thank
Oh.
you.
Well, it's all true. Because you can't say no. I
Thank
can't just be
you.
lying on my own podcast out here. You know what I'm saying? Like that could get weird. And then people are going to follow you and they're going to be like, well, this girl sucks.
Well, this
no,
girl's
you're actually
weird.
really amazing.
Thank you.
I can't. And I'm excited for everything that you're doing. So I think it's going to be great.
Appreciate
Thanks for being on, girl.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you have a great day, y'all. Share the episode.